Hey guys, Dwayne here. Today I want to talk a little bit about getting sucked back in. When you're dealing with an emotionally abusive, narcissistic abusive, covert narcissistic abusive ex, one of the things that you have to worry about whenever you're dealing with this and you're working on it is getting sucked back in. And one of the issues with that is this situation is so bizarre and so extraordinary that you have a hard time believing it, okay? And when that happens, you question yourself on what you think you know and what has happened and your perspective of it and all that stuff. And also what happens is whenever your ex is full of supply and is doing well, meaning they're winning, they feel like they have the upper hand, a couple of things can happen. One can be that they are just vindictive and they continue to poke you, but typically they may actually appear happy and they may actually act nice. Now, the thing you have to remember on that, well, let me back up. When that happens and you're already questioning yourself, it can be really confusing because you're going to go through stages of this where you're not entirely sure what has actually happened to you. You're going to question it and you're going to be constantly rethinking and going through this again and again and again, trying to figure out what exactly happened to you, what it all really meant, and stuff like that. Now, the thing you have to remember is it's all an illusion. It's all a facade. It's not really real. And the risk is whenever you are vulnerable like that, your ex has a perfect opportunity by appearing nice and acting nice, maybe even being gracious on a couple of things, to pull you back into their reality, their view of reality, and start the abuse all over again. So you have to be really careful about it, and you have to remember that what they project isn't real. It's a facade. It's not really the core person underneath. And as you're going through this, you may actually question yourself on what you really know. You may think, well, maybe you may start making excuses for it, thinking that, well, maybe they were just mad. Maybe they were influenced by other people. Maybe they didn't really want to do what they've done with the smear campaign and different stuff like that. Maybe they're just, they're following advice from other people and making decisions that they really don't want to do, but they're nervous, right? I went through the same thing where, it's like I actually at one point was blaming other people for making her not making her the way she was, but, well, okay, yeah, I mean, technically that's what I mean. I was saying, okay, well, if these particular people weren't in her life and weren't giving her giving her this advice to do, basically really bad things, and all the stuff that we've all been through, the smear campaign, the accusations, all that stuff. The thing is, well, and here's the problem, right? In certain situations, that can be true. That could be true. You could have somebody who is giving them undue influence. They're nervous. They're not sure what they're doing. They're trying to make the best decisions they can, and they're being vindictive. What I would say on that is if you have a conversation, and I think I've said this before, if you have a conversation on this and you talk about it and nothing changes or the attacks increase or at least maintain the same, it's not the case. I mean, unless you've done something really significant, and I think a lot of us haven't. It's like we get caught up in these situations and we either end up being discarded or we finally just say, okay, I've had enough. And in my situation, I had enough. I didn't realize what I was dealing with, but I just knew I didn't want to live that way anymore. So there wasn't really a real reason to be mad. But in that situation, it's a narcissistic injury to them, and you might as well have, slept with their best friend or something. I mean, it's the reaction. Their reaction isn't appropriate for what's actually going on, if that makes any sense. Okay, so you may like I said, you may question yourself on what you know, but what I would recommend you do to help you through this is to make a list of everything you've been through. And the reason that's important is because when they are going through when they're going through a happy phase or a nice phase. I made a video before about beware of the nice. That it can really be hard for you to recall and remember what's going on. So if you write it down, if you enumerate what you've been through, you can actually refer back to it. If you do it once, that's fine, you can refer back to it. But if you run through it, and I had to do this, guys, I had to do this myself. If you run through the list to remind you what you've been through, then you can say, no, wait a minute, this isn't, this is real. I am really experiencing this, and I need to listen to it. Now, one thing I've said previously, and what I will say again right now, one of the benefits I had is she would constantly do things to remind me why we were doing this, why I had left. Now, what I mean by that is when I was feeling vulnerable early on, and when I was questioning myself. So when I was going through this, and I was questioning myself on what was happening and what I had experienced, and feeling like maybe I was making a mistake, I think the narcissistic injury for her, that I decided to leave and she didn't decide to leave, that I basically, I guess, beat her to the punch, infuriated her. So she constantly was doing things to basically be vindictive, mean, anything that she could do to poke me in the eye or throw bills my way, to try to take away time with the kids, whatever she could do, any way she could exert control or power, she would do it. So in my situation, it was actually helpful because every time I had one of those situations where I was like, man, is this, am I really doing the right thing? Have I really thought about this correctly? And it was, that she would do something to remind me that yes, I was doing the right thing. When you go through that list, make sure you annotate what actually falls in the category and the symptoms of narcissistic behavior, because that will also help you to recognize that what you're dealing with, and hopefully to not get sucked back in. So the next thing on this is you got to remember what patterns of behavior have been repeated, right? I mean, if you've gone through this and let's say you have gone back, or you have tried to open the door, or you've done something to have an opportunity for healing, and in the relationship, and everything goes back the same. And this is typical as well, is they'll get in a situation where they think everything has gone back to the same, and they will switch and go right back to the narcissistic controlling, covert narcissistic controlling behavior. My ex did that. Over the last few years, every time I have thought that she was doing something to change, she would always demonstrate, as soon as we got back to some type of normalcy. And I'm not talking about living, I'm just talking about just where I'm opening up to at least have the opportunity to communicate with her. It went south really fast. And bottom line, guys, you just got to accept the reality of what you're dealing with and what you're in. I mean, it's really tough, but that's important, because whenever you have those days where either they've done something to where you're questioning it, or you're just having a bad day where you get up and you're just reminiscing or ruminating about the past, and maybe it was good or whatever, you have to remember what you've been through, and don't allow yourself to get basically sucked back in. All right, so I want to summarize this up, or wrap this up, and bottom line is, with the type of abuse, it's easy to get sucked back in. It's you have to really be on the defensive on that, because they manipulate you and pull you in so much and you want it so badly, and you want to believe, as you're, when you first start learning about this, you want it to be wrong. So you're looking for any reason for it to be wrong, and for you to basically to say it's, this isn't, I mean, it really wasn't real. It was just a misunderstanding or whatever. Guys, look at what's happened in the past and make sure you protect yourself, which rolls into the second thing, which is maintain solid and appropriate boundaries. Don't let them in. Don't compromise whatever boundary you've set, because they're going to try to do that. They are going to try to suck you in and then basically reassert control and power over you. I mean, and this is whether you're a guy or a girl, this is the typical pattern of behavior. So if you have solid boundaries and you basically say, no, this is where I'm at, and anything that's beyond this is inappropriate, and I am not going to accept it. I'm not going to make excuses for it. I'm not going to allow it. Is crucial when you're going through this. And okay, one of the problems you're probably going to deal with is what I was talking about in the beginning, is where you're not really sure. And what I mean is that you're questioning yourself, and you're like, man, is this really true? So you may have to test the situation. And if you do, just be really careful, guys, because like I said before, in my situation, every time I felt vulnerable, she did something to poke me in the eye. Had she not done that, had she decided that I could still be a good source of supply, she could have easily sucked me back in, because I didn't know what I was dealing with. And I mean, honestly, at that stage of the game, if she would have said, the relationship's important, you're whatever, I'm really mad at you, but yes, the marriage is important, I probably would have stuck it out and tried to work on it. And had that happen, I would probably still be in that situation today, and I would be miserable, and I wouldn't even know why. And I've said this before, I am so grateful that she was basically evil, because it forced me to maintain my boundaries and not go back. So if you have to test, just guys, be really careful. Just take care of yourself and protect yourself. If you're testing, make sure you are watching for that list of stuff that I said you should make earlier, and you should do that, and for the list of narcissistic type behavior. And just be on the lookout for it. If you're feeling vulnerable on it, just think about that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up. If you want to add some comments about how maybe you were vulnerable to getting sucked back into the relationship, leave it in the comments below. If the video means anything to you, if this means anything to you, that didn't sound right. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, if it's helping you, please subscribe. And if you know somebody else who might benefit from what I've talked about today, please share it with them so that they can see it as well. And all right, guys, take it easy, and I will talk to you later. Bye.